Another day, another New York Islanders player put on IR. We have the latest injury news, an update on the World Juniors, and a full preview of tonight's game against the Arizona Coyotes. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Plenty to talk about on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, feel free to send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So make sure you join me for instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Well, the hits just keep on coming, as they say. Injuries in this particular case, and on Wednesday, two more moves made by the Islanders in response to those injuries. The Islanders placing defenseman Robert Bortuzzo on the IR. He suffered a lower body injury in Tuesday night's game in Denver against the Colorado Avalanche. He took a hit from Samuel Girard in the second period, kind of fell awkwardly, let's say, on his leg, and his legs were kind of caught underneath him, and you could see he had to be helped off the ice. That right leg just could not put any weight on it whatsoever as he was being helped off the ice. So Bortuzzo now on IR, not on long-term IR, at least not at this point, but he is obviously unavailable for at least a week. Then the Islanders made another move. They called up on an emergency basis goaltender Ken Appleby from Bridgeport. So Appleby, what does this mean? Well, okay, first off, Semyon Varlamov has not yet been placed on IR. Now, he may be at some point. We are still waiting right now for any kind of actual injury update on Varly. But to me, having Appleby called up definitely tells me that the New York Islanders know that there's a real possibility that Varly will not even be able to be available as the backup tonight in Arizona. So Appleby, for the second time in a week, is called up. And look, I've been thinking about this a little bit. First of all, because they called up Appleby and placed Bortuzzo, on the injured reserve, in order to activate Adam Pelech or anybody else off LTIR or IR, the Islanders would need to make a corresponding move. There is no available open roster space as of right now. Now, that move could be you place Varlamov on IR. But as of right now, it is unclear what the long-term update is. And since the Islanders were traveling from Denver to play the Coyotes in Arizona tonight, No morning skate yesterday, so no updates given by the team. We're waiting, and again, follow on X in order to get updates as soon as we find out about them here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. But I think something that has to be thought about, and I hate to even bring it up, but I think it is part of the equation right now. This Islanders team is dealing with a lot of injuries, and injuries are a part of the game. We know that. Every team, every year, is dealing with injuries. But when you think about how many Islanders players are 30 or older, it makes the likelihood of injuries more significant, more likely, and it takes longer for players to recover from those injuries. And, you look up and down the roster, and, Robert Bortuzzo, who just got hurt, 34, mid-30s. Semyon Varlamov, 35, mid-30s. Adam Pelech, Ryan Pollock, both 29, so not quite 30. But Scott Mayfield, who's been on and off the IR a couple of times already, 31. Mike Riley is 30. Among the forwards, Anders Lee, 33. Brock Nelson, 32. J.G. Pajot, 31. Kyle Palmieri, 32. Casey Cizikas, 32. Clutterbuck, 36. Matt Martin, 34. Injuries are going to happen a little more frequently when you have an older roster. And like I said, it'll take a little longer to recover from them. And that is definitely a concern over the long haul of an 82-game NHL season. But to me, the bigger concern remains the goaltending situation, because I'm not sure how much confidence the Islanders have in Ken Appleby. If Semyon Varlamov is unavailable for a week, 2 weeks, 5 days, whatever it's going to be, is there a point where the Islanders would say to Ken Appleby, you're in, you're our goalie tonight, you're getting your first start as an Islander, at least. He has one previous NHL start, that with the Devils, and that's it. Now, the good news is that the Islanders don't have any back-to-backs this week. Their next back-to-back, and they only have one in the entire month of January, but the back-to-back comes January 15th, they're in Minnesota. January 16th, they're in Winnipeg. Bad news is that it really is a 3 games in 4 days kind of a stretch, because it's January 13th in Nashville, off on the 14th, the 15th in Minnesota, the 16th in Winnipeg. So if Semyon Varlamov isn't back before next week, really, well, a week and almost 2 weeks, really, 10 days from now is the start of that 3 games in 4 nights stretch. If Varly isn't ready to go by then, you're looking at either Ken Appleby being the goalie for one of those games, or you got to bring in another goalie. And it's not going to be, Jakub Skarek. I doubt they would go with him, because they could have called him up already twice, and both times they went with Ken Appleby. And look, Skarek is struggling in the AHL right now. Granted, the Bridgeport Islanders as a team are struggling, but you may have to bring in a low-priced veteran goalie who can give you a start or two if this is a longer-term thing. And the bigger worry in my mind is, what do you do about Ilya Sorokin? Because you can't afford to have your best player and your goalie tired because he's playing every game in January while your backup is injured. It's not going to work that way. And this is one of those things that maybe you get away with it in January, but come March and April when that playoff hunt is on. Remember, down the stretch last year, and if I recall the numbers off the top of my head, Varlamov only played 3 games from the trade deadline to the end of the season. I believe it was 22 games for Sorokin at that point. If you need Sorokin to do something like that again, he can't play, 9 straight games in January leading up to March and April when the games are all must win and they're out of, chances to add to your point total. So this is critical, and hopefully we'll have an update on Semyon Varlamov very soon. And obviously both Varly and Robert Bortuzzo, we wish them a complete and speedy recovery. We have got more to get to on today's show. We're going to talk a little bit about the World Juniors. Islanders with 2 players playing for Team USA. We'll have the latest on that. Plus, we will preview tonight's game in Arizona. It's a 9 o'clock Eastern time start. And don't forget, you can catch every minute of that game with the Islanders hometown radio broadcast on SiriusXM. Just go on the SXM app and search for Islanders. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a defenseman who was with the team in the late 2000s. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. We're almost at the halfway point in the Islanders season. And, well, this team is battling for a playoff berth. But regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you, you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Sorokin, Crosby, or McKinnon will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Islander fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So the Islanders have 2 players still in the World Juniors. Canada, upset, by the way, they are out of this tournament, which is certainly a surprise. But Team USA is still in it, and that's where the 2 Islander prospects are playing, Quinn Findlay and Danny Nelson. And the Team USA was in the quarterfinals against Latvia and beat the Latvians by a final score of 7-2. So basically, they are in the semifinals. Canada going home, unfortunately for them. But the big news, Danny Nelson, who was the Islanders' first overall pick in this year's NHL entry draft, and, second round, but the Islanders' first pick, because the Islanders haven't had a first round pick in the last 4 drafts. But Danny Nelson getting a goal in this tournament in the first period in the game against Latvia, his first score of the tournament, and it was a deflection in front. There was a shot by Seamus Casey, who was a New Jersey Devils draft pick, and that goal actually turned out to be the game winner because it made the score 3-1 in a game Team USA won 7-2. And, again, Nelson, Findlay, and Jimmy Snuggerud, who is a first-round pick of the Blues in 2022, they have been the Americans' 4th line throughout this tournament. And again, both of them are playing roughly the same amount of ice time per game. Finley averaging 12:55 per game, Nelson 12:39. And the other good news, and this is something that the Islanders really do need, they do record the speed of a lot of these players during the tournament. They've got all these things measured and what have you. Well, basically, Quinn Finley had the fastest recorded speed thus far at the World Juniors. That is 38.68 kilometers per hour. So Quinn Finley, if and when he's ready, and believe me, he is still at least a couple of years away from being NHL ready, but Quinn Finley would give the Islanders some badly needed speed for sure. And the Islanders, the organization definitely needs something, more speed from top to bottom. And let's see, what happens. Finley playing at the University of Wisconsin this year. And in 18 games, he has 5 goals and 7 points and is a +7. So that is, again, good news for the Islanders to see, how Finley does and where he's going to fit in, basically, during this entire, future as far as him being a prospect. And the Islanders need him. They really, really are going to need more speedy players to join. Now, as for Nelson is playing at the University of Notre Dame right now. And he right now has 3 goals, 14 points in 18 college games so far. Again, these are 18-year-old kids. They are not anywhere near NHL ready. Nelson, though, good size at 6'3", 202. And it'll be interesting to see whether he spends 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or more at Notre Dame. But again, when you get players, and everydayers, we've discussed this, but when you have players at the age of 18 going up against the best other 18-year-olds in the world, really, in these tournaments, it is extremely valuable experience for these players. And even though both Nelson and Finley are playing a checking role, they are not involved in the power play or trying to create. I mean, yeah, you want them to create offense, but that's not their primary role on the fourth line. So far, so good as far as the way they look in this tournament. And just to be able to go up against the best in the world in your age group. And also, it's not just the competition. It's also the pressure, because there are a lot of scouts, a lot of coaches, a lot of eyes on, the World Juniors on television. And just overall, this is the kind of situation where you know that there's a lot at stake and there's a lot to talk about. So we'll see, but the stakes are high. The pressure is on, and having these guys come through definitely is good. Meanwhile, the Team USA, in their semifinal, they will face Finland, and that is a 1:30 Eastern time start today. Czechia and Sweden are in the other semifinal, so we'll see if Team USA gets past Finland, whether or not, which one of those two opponents they might play. But good news there for Quinn Finley and Danny Nelson, and for the New York Islanders, just to see those two prospects doing well at the World Juniors. It is something, it's just great to have something positive to say about Islanders prospects for once. Glad to see it, and glad to share it all with you. We've got more to get to on today's show. The Arizona Coyotes, Islanders going to Arizona to face them tonight. That is a 9 o'clock Eastern time start. And again, you can catch every moment of this broadcast, Islanders radio broadcast, on SiriusXM. Just go to the SXM app and search for Islanders. But we'll have a full preview of that game, plus our Islanders birthday of the day, and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live, same game parlays. Find bets in their new Explore tab, or you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. That's the best way to find the most popular parlays and so much more. And look, you got the NFL, you got the college football championship, the NBA, college basketball, and hey, check out the odds for the Islanders and the Coyotes on FanDuel for tonight's game. Maybe you want to bet on how many saves Ilya Sorokin will have. Check it all out at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So the Islanders and the Coyotes tonight. And look, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, the Arizona Coyotes, they're terrible. No, they're not. If you've been paying attention to what's going on in the NHL's Central Division, the Coyotes are 4 games over NHL 500. They are 19-15-2. Imagine that, a team with only 2 overtime losses or shootout losses. But anyway, they are an above 500 team. They're getting it done primarily with defense, 9th in the league in goals against, 22nd in the league in goals scored, and power play is solid, 11th in the league. Penalty kill a little below average, 19th in the league. So hopefully the Islanders' power play can click as a result, but boy, oh boy, they cannot take those silly penalties and allow Arizona to get too many chances. Coyotes have won 2 of their last 3 games. They beat Colorado, beat Anaheim, and lost to Florida, and they are in the midst of a lengthy 5-game homestand. This is the second game of that homestand, and just like the Islanders, they have Wednesday off after playing Tuesday, but unlike the Islanders, they didn't have to travel. Right now, Lawson Krause is the goal scorer, leading goal scorer with 16, followed by Michael Carconi, and with 14, Clayton Keller with 13, Nick Schmaltz has 10, and again, we look at the line combinations now for Arizona. Alex Kerfoot, Clayton Keller, and Nick Schmaltz are the top line. Nick Bukestad centers Matthias Maselli and Lawson Krause on the second line. The third line, left to right, Michael Carconi, Jack McBain, and Zach Sanford, while Logan Cooley centers Liam O'Brien and Jason Zucker on the fourth line. Sean Dursey and Michael Kesserling are the top defense pair. J.J. Moser and Matthew Dumba, the second pairing. Juuso Valimaki and Troy Stetcher are the third defense pair. The goaltenders, Connor Ingram and Karel Vejmelka. Right now, 3 guys on IR, Barrett Hayton, Vladislav Koliakonek, and Travis Boyd. So that's the lineup. And I'll tell you again, stay out of the penalty box and got to put some pressure. Here's something the Islanders just haven't done enough of all year round, but we saw it again in particular Tuesday against the Avalanche. Can we spend more time in the offensive zone. I know this team is, trying very hard to be more aggressive offensively and to be on the attack more. But, two things this team really needs to do: spend more time in the offensive zone and just not give up those late leads. And I think those two things, well, they are related. So we'll see how it plays out. But those are some of the keys for the game against the Coyotes, and you can't take them lightly. Remember, the first meeting at UBS, the Islanders won it by a score of 1-0. So that was a very tight, evenly played game. And now this game, this is a road game for the Islanders. Coyotes get the last change. This won't be easy. It might have looked easy when the schedule came out over the summer, but it isn't. And the Islanders need to play well to win, and they need to accumulate some points, especially since after this, they face the Vegas Golden Knights, the defending Stanley Cup champions. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day, and today is the 43rd birthday of former Islanders defenseman Freddie Meyer. The native of Sanbornville, New Hampshire, went to Boston University for 4 years, did not get drafted, but made his NHL debut with one game in 2003-2004 with the Flyers, played a couple of seasons between the Flyers and their AHL affiliate, and then joined the Islanders midway through the 06-07 season, was briefly with the Coyotes of all teams in 07-08, and then back with the Islanders in 08-09, 2009-2010. Finished his career with 1 year with the Atlanta Thrashers and then in Sweden. For his career, 281 NHL games, 20 goals, 73 points, and 155 penalty minutes. He played 6 playoff games, had 1 assist and 8 penalty minutes. Those all came with the Philadelphia Flyers. And Meyer was the kind of defenseman where he can give you a little offense, but, he was mostly either a bottom pair or a seventh defenseman who could easily pinch in and give you some valuable minutes. We go back and look at one of his better games as an Islander, March 16th, 2010, Islanders in Vancouver at GM Place, taking on the Canucks. Dwayne Rolison, the goalie for the Islanders. Roberto Luongo getting the start for Vancouver, although he would not last the game. And in this game, Freddie Meyer, our Islanders' birthday of the day, scores in the final seconds of the second period, assisted by John Tavares and Trent Hunter. Meyer scoring on his only shot of the game. He played 19 minutes and 32 seconds for the Islanders as the Islanders defeated the Vancouver Canucks by a final score of 5-2. So Freddie Meyer, nice guy, useful defenseman. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone again who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll get you ready for that big weekend game against Vegas. We'll have hopefully some more injury updates, and of course, we'll have our key takeaways from tonight's game against Arizona. So make sure you join us for that. We've got a full show coming right at you. Until then, stay safe, everybody. Oh, one other thing, don't forget, because the game doesn't start until 9 o'clock, I will have the premiere of tomorrow's show up about 45 minutes after the game ends on YouTube. So if you're a YouTube person, we usually premiere at midnight. It'll probably be around 12:45, give or take, but I'll update you on X or Twitter as to exactly when we will premiere. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.